If you came here this morning, walked in and said, I thought it was at Calvary Chapel. What are all these people wearing these funny paisley things around their neck, singing hymns? God is here. And this is kind of an unspoken tradition that started, I think, because a lot of people coming had family obligations immediately after the service, and so, got dressed up. And but whether you have one of these funny paisley things around your neck or not, the Lord is here to speak to you this morning, and you are welcome. I don't know if Dave said it, but if you're a visitor here this morning, we have some visitor cards in the back. Please fill one out. We won't send you begging for money or anything like that, but we just like to know who you are so we can pray for you. That's what we do with those cards. And if you have some need, that we can know about that need. One more thing, if you have a Bible with you, open it to two spots, Acts chapter 2 and the Gospel of Luke chapter 24. If you don't have a Bible with you for whatever reason this morning, slip up your hand, and Pastor Dave wants to get one into that hand so that you can follow along with us in our study of the Scriptures this morning. Acts chapter 2 and Luke chapter 24. We had a fun time here last night. If you weren't here last night, you wouldn't believe what this place looked like last night with all the kids here for the Easter egg hunt and adults, and there was pizza, and there was some crazy games. I liked especially the game where the kids had to line up on this end of the sanctuary with a plastic spoon in their mouth out of the side, kind of like Popeye, and put an egg in it and walk from that end down, touch the wall, and walk back again without dropping the egg, and see, we had two teams to see which one would win. And I don't know if you remember, there was an old routine by, I forget who it was, the Ministry of the Silly Walk. And was that? Monty Python, yeah. I repented from watching that stuff. No. But you want to talk about some silly walks as they're going down trying to keep that egg right in place. It was pretty funny. But that was much more of a celebration that most of this week has been for me. This week actually has been a very solemn week. Last week was a wonderful day on Saturday. My son and my new daughter-in-law were married. And there was such a celebration. And I had no concept of what was going on in the outside world because I was so focused on that. And Sunday morning, just before I came up on the platform, Dwayne let me know about the 3 police officers who had been killed and that we should pray for them. And I was totally ignorant of it because I hadn't watched the news or anything. And so we did pray for them. And I came to find out when I went home that I had worked closely with Paul Shulo. He worked at the company where I work for and left to go into the police academy. I worked with him for about a year and a half. He and another guy and I worked very closely on a project for that year and a half. And for those of you who weren't here last Sunday, one of the items that we talked about was the fact that with how close the coming of the Lord is, and how we don't know, no one knows the days that are numbered for them. Nobody knows. And that it is incumbent upon us as believers to be sure that we share the truth with those who are around us at opportunities that we have. And so when I went home and I opened up the paper, there on the front page is Paul's picture. I sat for about an hour and just tried to think about the conversations that I had with Paul. Now, everybody at my work knows I'm a believer. Most of them know I'm a pastor. I share with them as appropriate. I don't beat them up with the gospel. But I do try and make sure that they know the truth. And it's just a part of me. But I began thinking, did I really share the whole gospel with them? Did I really, where was his life at? He was a good man. Paul was a very good man. He was one of those kind of people you could depend on. If Paul said he was going to do something, he did it. If he said he was going to do something and he couldn't come through on it, he came to you and he told you. He was just a good, righteous guy. He was a good guy. And as we know, during most of the week this week, there was tremendous memorials and ways of honoring all 3 of these men who were all described as not just because they were police officers, but in their personal lives as very strong men and honorable men who gave their lives in a very significant way to keep us safe. You know, it's an amazing thing to be a police officer. How many here have been police officers in the past? Are there anyone who was a police officer in the past? We honor you, Roger, because that is something I can't imagine doing. I think it was about 2 years ago. We have an alarm system in our building here. And you can see over the doorway there next to the exit sign, that's a little motion detector. So if somebody sneaks in here and gets past the door alarms and they're moving around in here, the alarm system will go off and we get a call. Well, we went through a spat of getting calls. We got about 4 or 5 calls over a 6-week period where the motion detector had gone off, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. But every time what happened was the security company would call me, then I would come here, I would meet the city of police, or the city of Pittsburgh police officers, and I would open up the door, and they would come in and walk through the building to see if anyone was here, and open every door. Now, these are people who had never been in the building before. They don't know what's in here, and they don't know when they open a door if someone has got a gun, like this guy did for Paul, or not. That's incredible. There's an incredible personality. There's a special person that does that. We have people who have served our country in the military here this morning. It's a very similar kind of thing. And we honor them. There's tremendous grief, and there was honor for 3 honorable men here in Pittsburgh. Well, Monday, my Aunt Sandy and Krista and I took a few days, and we went down to Washington, D.C. And we got down to Washington, D.C. on Monday evening, and the first thing we did was we went over to the Lincoln Memorial. I grew up in the 60s. I considered myself something of a patriot by hating the government in those days and being opposed to whatever it was doing. And about 10 years ago, we took our children, maybe 15 years ago, we took our children to Washington, D.C., first time I'd been there in a long time, and went into the Lincoln Memorial. And I read the words that are there in the Lincoln Memorial, the words from Lincoln's second inaugural address, and of course the Gettysburg Address. And I was struck by how intense those words were and what meaning. And I was struck by the intense, just incredible wisdom of this man Lincoln, and what he had said and what he had done. And suddenly I felt like I was becoming a real patriot and caring for my country. Thought about this man Lincoln. And every time I've gone to that memorial since, we go to it every time we go to Washington, D.C., and then do some other stuff. Every time I go in there, I'm struck by the sense of awe and the sense of honor of this righteous man who led this country through a time of incredible calamity and war and hatred, and then was assassinated